Her peaceful evening at the Prismatic Vale's ancient tea house was about to explode into a night that would shatter Duskfall City's criminal underworld. When 7 members of the notorious Azure Phantoms decided to torment the quiet woman in the sleek black wheelchair, they never imagined they were provoking the deadliest shadow operative ever produced by the Obsidian Protocol, Nyxis Nyx. Vraidyn had spent 3 years crafting her cover as a disabled artist, but in less than 3 minutes she would remind them why her codename once made even hardened assassins tremble. What happened next would expose a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of power, leaving a trail of shattered alliances and deadly secrets that had been buried for decades. Before we continue with this thrilling story, tell us where you're watching from. If you love stories of justice and redemption, hit that subscribe button right now. Tomorrow's story will reveal a shocking truth about one of the world's most mysterious unsolved cases. Now back to our story. The neon-soaked streets of Duskfall City's Crescentweave district painted shifting shadows across Nyx's wheelchair as she guided it with precise, measured movements through the evening crowd. The sweet scent of cherry blossoms from Syrael's traditional tea house drifted on the cool autumn breeze, mixing with the electric hum of hover vehicles and the distant thrum of the massive quantum barriers that protected the metropolis. 3 years in this chair had taught her to read the city differently. Every curb, every slope, every subtle change in the textured neo-concrete told a story. The weight of her modified Phantom-class pulse pistol pressed against her lower back, concealed beneath the flowing black synth silk jacket that had become her trademark in the neighborhood. The weapon was a reminder of a past she'd tried to bury, just like the neural augments hidden beneath her skin. "Your usual, Nyx?" Syrael's melodic voice carried from the tea house entrance. The elegant shop owner's silver eyes held a warmth that few in this harsh district ever showed. They'd developed a genuine connection over the years, one of the rare, true relationships Nyx had allowed herself since going dark. "Thanks, Syrael. It's been interesting today." Nyx maneuvered through the entrance, automatically cataloging exits, sightlines, potential cover, old habits encrypted into muscle memory by years of wet-work operations. Her secure quantum comm buzzed, the third message from Dr. Voss today. The weapon shipment they'd been tracking was moving tonight. The Azure Phantoms were getting sloppy, overconfident. That's exactly why she was here, playing the role of a disabled artist in Duskfall's shadiest district. Nobody looked twice at her, and that's what made her lethal. The tea house's ancient wind chimes tinkled as the door slid shut. Nyx's augmented hearing picked up the distinctive sound of grav boots on neo-concrete, multiple sets moving with predatory purpose. Her reflection in the quantum glass windows showed 7 figures entering. Matte black combat suits with pulsing azure circuit lines, face masks featuring the distinctive phantom skull design that had become synonymous with terror in the district. Her heart rate remained steady, neural augments automatically adjusting her body's responses as she sipped her tea. "Well, look who we have here. Kyrith the Wraith." Malachi's voice carried across the tea house, its artificial harmonics designed to inspire fear. "Our district's own little artist." The gang leader's mock admiration dripped with toxic intent. 3 more phantoms entered behind him, spreading out in a tactical pattern that made Nyx's combat instinct sing with recognition. "Evening, Kyrith." She kept her voice neutral, wheelchair positioned for quick movement. "The jasmine blend is excellent today if you'd like to try it." Kyrith moved closer, the ambient light catching on the chrome augments protruding from his jaw. "You know what I can't figure out?" He leaned down, invading her space with breath that reeked of synthetic stimulants and cheap synth sake. "How someone like you always seems to be around when we're conducting business. It's almost like you're watching us." The other patrons were quietly slipping out, leaving only Syrael behind the counter, his hand likely on the silent alarm they'd installed together months ago. Nyx could take all 7 men. She'd run the scenarios 1,000 times in her combat simulator. But it would blow her cover, waste 3 years of deep infiltration. "I live here, Kyrith." She shrugged, playing the role she'd perfected. "The Crescentweave isn't that big." Thyler Draven, Kyrith's enforcer, circled behind her chair. "Maybe we should help you find somewhere else to be, little artist." His augmented voice purred with artificial menace. Accidents happen to people in chairs all the time. Nyx's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her armrest. One precise movement and she could trigger the chair's defense systems, disable Thalar's augments with an EMP pulse. The modified combat techniques she'd developed worked perfectly from a seated position. But she held back, remembering Dr. Voss's words. The weapons cache is everything. We need the whole network. Kyrith grabbed her chair's handles, spinning her to face him. You've got 1 hour to clear out of the Crescentweave. After that, he grinned, revealing rows of chrome-plated teeth that gleamed under the tea house's soft lights. Well, let's just say we know people in the neural health department. Quantum therapy approvals can get lost. The old Nyx would have eliminated him right there. Her augments were already calculating kill scenarios. 2.3 seconds to disable his neural interface, another 1.4 to trigger a synaptic shutdown. But 3 years of deep cover had taught her patience. Sometimes you had to lose the battle to win the Shadow War. She let fear show in her eyes, just enough to be convincing. I understand, she forced a tremor into her voice. Please, I don't want any trouble. Kyrith straightened, satisfied. Smart girl. Boys, let's show her what trouble looks like anyway. Nyx's quantum comm vibrated against her spine, a coded warning from Dr. Voss. The weapons shipment was moving earlier than expected. Everything happening in the tea house suddenly made sense. They were clearing the area. As Thalar reached for her chair, time seemed to slow. Her neural augments kicked into combat mode, analyzing every detail with crystalline clarity. The way Kyrith's left hand kept twitching toward his concealed blade. How Lysandra Cypher Caney watched from the doorway, her stealth field generator humming at a frequency only Nyx's enhanced hearing could detect. The slight disruption in the quantum glass window's reflection pattern that revealed a cloaked sniper on the building opposite. They weren't just here to intimidate. They were testing her reactions. Instead of fighting back, she forced herself to flinch as Thalar tilted her chair, spilling her onto the floor. Her teacup shattered on impact, its fragments scattering across the neo-concrete like fallen stars. The gang's laughter echoed off the ancient walls as Nyx lay there, playing helpless, burning their faces into her augmented memory. Each one would pay, but not today. Today she was building their confidence, letting them think they were untouchable. She'd learned during the Singapore incident that the deadliest predators were patient. Oops, Thalar laughed, his voice modulator making the sound unnaturally harsh. Looks like someone needs one of those emergency quantum beacons. As she struggled to right herself, making it look difficult, memories of her final mission for the Obsidian Protocol surfaced. The job that had cost her the use of her legs, but had given her something far more valuable: freedom. The quantum lab in Neo-Shanghai blazed with plasma fire as Nyx moved through the shadows, her stealth suit rendering her virtually invisible. The target was a rogue scientist working on illegal neural augments, or so she'd been told. But something felt wrong about this hit. She found Dr. Ilaria Voss in her private lab, not cowering as expected, but waiting. They told you I was developing illegal augments, didn't they? The doctor's voice was calm despite the chaos outside. What they didn't tell you is why. On the screens behind her, Nyx saw footage of Black Ops teams being enhanced against their will, turned into living weapons for the highest bidder. The Obsidian Protocol isn't what you think it is, Nyxis. They're not protecting society from the shadows. They're building an army of augmented assassins, and you're their prototype. The explosion that followed wasn't an accident. Nyx had chosen to destroy the lab's quantum core, knowing the feedback would fry her spinal augments. Better to lose her legs than remain their puppet. Dr. Voss had helped her disappear, develop a new identity, and most importantly, a mission: expose the true face of the Obsidian Protocol. Remember, Kyrith leaned down one last time, his chrome teeth catching the light. 1 hour. Then we stop being nice. He straightened her chair with mocked courtesy. Let's move, Phantoms. Our friend here needs to pack. Only when their heavy grav boots had faded into the distance did Nyx let her mask slip slightly. Syrael rushed over with a cleaning drone, his face flushed with anger. Nyx, I'm so sorry. I called district security, but it's fine, Syrael. Her voice was steady now, eyes hard as she watched the phantoms disappear around the corner. Everything's exactly where it needs to be. Her quantum comm buzzed again, Dr. Voss confirming the weapon shipment's movement. The phantoms had just made their biggest mistake, but they didn't know it yet. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They thought they'd intimidated a helpless artist. Instead, they'd given her the perfect excuse to be anywhere in the district, watching them under the guise of leaving. Nyx allowed herself a small smile as Syrael's cleaning drone gathered the broken teacup fragments. Sometimes the best weapon was letting your enemy think they'd already won. Her neural augments were already processing the tactical data gathered during the confrontation. 7 sets of breathing patterns, heart rates, micro-expressions all recorded and analyzed. More importantly, she'd confirmed her suspicion. The Azure Phantoms weren't just street-level criminals. Their augments were military-grade, bearing the distinctive quantum signatures of Obsidian Protocol technology. The pieces were falling into place. Now she just had to stay alive long enough to expose the truth, even if it meant sacrificing the last illusion of safety she had in the Crescentweave. Her hand brushed against the hidden compartment in her chair where she kept her most valuable possession, a quantum data core containing 3 years' worth of evidence against the organization that had tried to turn her into their perfect weapon. "They'll be watching the usual routes out of the district," she told Syrael quietly. "We need to make this look convincing." The tea house owner nodded, understanding dawning in his silver eyes. He'd been more than just a friendly face. He was her eyes and ears in the district, another former operative who'd seen too much and chosen to disappear. "I'll start spreading the word. By morning, everyone will think you're running scared." Nyx's augments registered the subtle shift in the quantum barriers surrounding Duskfall City. The weapons were already moving through the smuggling tunnels beneath the Crescentweave. Tonight would change everything. Either she'd expose the connection between the Azure Phantoms and the Obsidian Protocol, or she'd become another ghost in the system, another failed operative who disappeared without a trace. Night had fallen over Duskfall City, as Nyx wheeled herself into her modest apartment in the heart of the Crescentweave. The space, carefully chosen for its multiple escape routes and clear sight lines, had been her base of operations for the past 3 years. She engaged the quantum locks, ran her standard security sweep, then finally allowed her shoulders to relax. The burner comm hidden in her chair's secret compartment buzzed. Dr. Voss's voice was tense when she answered. "Tell me you didn't engage them, Nyx." "Relax, Ilaria. I played my part perfectly." Nyx moved to her hidden workstation, concealed behind a holographic wall displaying her artwork, each piece actually a sophisticated surveillance node monitoring the district. "They did exactly what we expected. Tried to run me out of the Crescentweave. The weapon shipment is definitely moving tonight." The quantum displays lit up, showing real-time feeds from across the district. Through the neural interface at the base of her skull, Nyx could process multiple data streams simultaneously, her augmented mind picking out patterns in the chaos. The Azure Phantoms were mobilizing, but something about their movement pattern felt wrong. "My source says it's massive," Voss continued. "Military-grade quantum weaponry bound for off-world colonies. We can't afford any mistakes." Nyx's jaw tightened as she watched Thaler Draven coordinating teams through the district. "They threatened to revoke my neural therapy access, Ilaria. Real original. Should have seen their faces, so proud of themselves for intimidating the poor disabled artist." "Nyx!" Voss's tone held a warning. I know. The mission comes first." She pulled up surveillance feeds of the Phantoms' known hideouts, but something caught her attention, a subtle distortion in the quantum field surrounding the district. Wait, something's not right. She enhanced the feed, her augments processing the data at inhuman speeds. The energy signature was familiar, hauntingly so. "Ilaria, are you seeing this? That quantum signature. It's Obsidian Protocol." "Impossible." But Voss's voice lacked conviction. "They wouldn't operate this openly. Unless..." Nyx's mind raced. "Unless this isn't just about weapons trafficking. Computer, enhance grid sector 7, overlay temporal patterns from the last 6 hours." The holographic display shifted, showing energy flows through the district's quantum grid. There it was, a pattern she'd seen only once before in Neo-Shanghai. They're not just moving weapons, they're setting up a quantum containment field around the entire district. A new alert flashed across her display. Multiple vehicles entering the Crescentweave, their signatures masked but their movement patterns military precise. This wasn't a simple weapon shipment. It was an operation. The realization hit her just as the first explosion shook the building. The quantum barrier surrounding Duskfall City flickered, creating a momentary dead zone in all communications. When it stabilized, the Crescentweave was cut off from the rest of the city, trapped inside a localized quantum containment field. "They're not trying to push me out," Nyx said quietly. "They're locking me in." Through her windows, she could see Azure Phantom teams moving with new purpose, their previous thuggish behavior replaced with tactical precision. These weren't gang members playing soldier. These were Obsidian Protocol operators wearing gang colors. Her secure comm crackled with static as Voss tried to maintain connection through the containment field. "Nyx. Have to. Extraction team. Compromised." The transmission died as a new voice filled the quantum frequency, one that made Nyx's augments surge with recognition protocols. "Agent Vraidyn." The artificial harmonics couldn't hide the authority in that voice. "Did you really think we'd let our most valuable asset simply walk away?" "Commander Echo. The Obsidian Protocol's chief of operations, supposed to have died in the Neo-Shanghai incident. The Azure Phantoms were never just a gang," he continued. "They were your test. 3 years we've watched you adapt, modify your combat techniques, develop new ways to fight. You've exceeded all expectations." Nyx's mind raced through scenarios, each one worse than the last. The quantum containment field meant no communication with the outside world, no easy escape routes, and her neural augments were picking up dozens of signatures converging on her position, all broadcasting Obsidian Protocol recognition codes. The wheelchair was a particularly brilliant touch. Echo's voice carried genuine admiration. "Who would suspect the disabled artist? You created the perfect cover story, better than anything we could have designed. That's why we let you maintain it for so long." "The weapons shipment," Nyx said, already knowing the answer. "A necessary fiction. There are no weapons, Agent Vraidyn. Only you. Our prototype, our greatest success. And now it's time to come home." The building's power grid suddenly surged, overloading her security systems. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel phantom fingers probing at her augments, trying to access her command protocols. They'd been waiting for this moment, gathering data on her modifications, learning how she'd adapted her systems. But they'd made one critical mistake. "You're right about one thing, Echo," she said, activating hidden commands in her wheelchair's systems. "I did create the perfect cover." The chair's panels slid open, revealing not just hidden weapons, but an entire suite of quantum technology she'd spent 3 years developing. If they thought her disability was a weakness, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. "But you forgot something crucial," she continued, as her apartment's walls shimmered, revealing their true nature. Every piece of art transforming into active combat systems. "I chose this location for a reason." The entire building was her weapon, every system modified, every circuit reprogrammed. She hadn't spent 3 years just hiding. She'd been preparing for exactly this moment. "Syrael," she commanded through her neural link, "execute Protocol Shadowfall." Across the Crescentweave, hidden quantum transmitters activated, creating a cascade of energy that rippled through the containment field. The Azure Phantoms' augments began to fail as her countermeasures took effect. She'd spent years studying their technology, planting backdoors in their systems, all while they thought they were watching her. Echo's voice held a new note, something close to fear. "What have you done?" "I learned from the best," Nyx replied, as chaos erupted across the district. "You taught me to turn weakness into strength. Now let me show you what your greatest success can really do." The night was about to become very interesting indeed. The Crescentweave erupted into chaos as Nyx's countermeasures rippled through the quantum grid. Emergency lights cast twisted shadows across the neo-concrete as failing augments sent Azure Phantom operatives staggering. Through her neural interface, she watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Years of playing weak, of letting them think the wheelchair defined her limits, had led to this moment. But Echo was no fool. Already she could detect new signatures entering the containment field. Backup systems, redundant protocols, contingencies within contingencies. The Obsidian Protocol hadn't survived this long by being predictable. Impressive adaptation, Echo's voice crackled through the quantum static. Using our own network architecture against us. But did you really think we wouldn't have countermeasures for our countermeasures? A new wave of energy pulsed through the district. Nyx felt it hit her systems like a tidal wave of corrupt data, trying to override her carefully crafted defenses. Lesser augments would have failed instantly, but she'd spent years preparing for this, building redundancies into redundancies. "You taught me well," she replied, fingers dancing across her wheelchair's hidden controls. "Always have a backup plan." She triggered her second-tier protocols, watching as her quantum encryptions engaged in a digital battle with the Obsidian Protocol systems. Through her windows, she could see Thalar Draven organizing a recovery team, his military training showing through the gang member facade. 3 floors down, approaching fast. Time to show them what 3 years of preparation really meant. "Syrael," she commanded through their secure channel. "Status on civilian evacuation?" "Underground tunnels are clear." His voice was steady, professional. "All non-combatants are being moved to safe zones, but Nyx, they're bringing in quantum hounds." Her augments surged with old recognition protocols. Quantum hounds, the Obsidian Protocol's elite hunter-killer units, cybernetically enhanced operators linked directly to the quantum grid. She'd run with them once before Neo-Shanghai, before she'd learned the truth. How many? 3 units spotted so far. They're different, enhanced somehow. Of course they were. She'd been their prototype after all. Everything they'd learned from studying her adaptations had gone into improving their next generation of operators. The building shook as breach charges detonated 3 floors below. Right on schedule. Nyx smiled coldly as she activated her chair's combat systems. Time to show them how much she'd learned about fighting from a seated position. "You know what your real mistake was, Echo?" She broadcasted on an open channel as she moved into position. "You assumed the chair was a limitation. The first Phantom breach team never saw it coming. As they stormed through the emergency stairwell, Nyx's modified wheelchair shot through the access door at precisely calculated speed. Its reinforced frame, powered by quantum core technology she'd salvaged from Neo-Shanghai, turned it into a battering ram that sent 2 operators flying. Before the others could react, hidden weapon ports opened in the chair's frame. Non-lethal rounds. She needed prisoners for questioning, but the impact was devastating. 3 more Phantoms went down, their augments shorting out from the specialized electromagnetic pulses built into each projectile. "Target mobile!" someone shouted. "She's not using standard—" The voice cut off as Nyx demonstrated exactly why she'd chosen this building. Every surface was a weapon, every corner rigged with countermeasures. She'd spent 3 years memorizing the layout, practicing movements that looked random to observers, but were precisely calculated for maximum tactical advantage. Her chair's wheels gripped the wall as she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible, using momentum and carefully timed quantum pulses to run parallel to the ground. The remaining Phantoms fired where she should have been, their shots passing harmlessly through empty air as she attacked from an angle their combat algorithms hadn't considered. "Impressive." Echo's voice held genuine appreciation. "You've turned your apparent weakness into an entirely new form of combat, but you're still thinking too small." A new signature appeared on her tactical display, moving fast through the quantum field. Something big, putting out energy readings that made her augments scream warnings. Through the broken windows, she caught her first glimpse of what Echo had been developing in her absence. A massive figure, more machine than human, its frame crackling with quantum energy. One of the new quantum hounds, but evolved far beyond what she remembered. You were just the beginning, Echo explained as the creature smashed through her defenses like they were made of paper. We learned so much from your adaptations. How to push the boundaries between human and machine. How to turn limitations into advantages. The hound moved with impossible speed for its size, shrugging off her countermeasures like they were nothing. Its augments operated on frequencies she'd never seen before, using principles she'd pioneered but pushed to terrifying new extremes. The difference is, she said, calculating trajectories as she evaded its initial assault. I chose my adaptations. You're still just following protocols. The fight that followed was unlike anything the Crescentweave had ever seen. The Quantum Hound was a masterpiece of cybernetic enhancement, every movement optimized for lethal efficiency. But Nyx had spent 3 years learning to fight smarter, not stronger. She used the building's architecture against it, leading the massive creature into tight corners where its size worked against it. Her wheelchair became a blur of motion, each movement precise and economical, exploiting angles that most fighters would never consider. You see? Echo's voice held a teacher's pride. This is why you were our greatest success. Even now, you're adapting, learning, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The hound caught her chair with a glancing blow, sending her spinning toward the edge of the broken floor. But Nyx had planned for this too. As she fell, hidden grapples shot from her chair's frame, turning what looked like certain defeat into a controlled descent. The difference between us, she replied, activating her chair's final surprise, is that I learned to think beyond the protocols. The quantum surge that followed wasn't meant to destroy the hound. Instead, it did something far more dangerous. It severed its connection to the Obsidian Protocol's control network. For just a moment, the creature's augments ran free, unsuppressed by the limitations Echo had placed on them. The effect was immediate and devastating. The hound's programming began to fragment as years of suppressed consciousness surfaced. Through her neural interface, Nyx caught fragments of the operator's original personality breaking through the conditioning. That's why you really want me back, she broadcast, knowing Echo would understand the implications. Because I'm not just your greatest success, I'm your worst nightmare, proof that your operators can break free. The Quantum Hound crashed to its knees, years of buried humanity fighting against its programming. Across the district, Nyx could feel other operators' augments responding to her signal, the quantum field rippling with awakening consciousness. You've learned nothing. Echo's voice had lost its artificial calm. Freedom is an illusion. The protocols exist for a reason. Without them, without control, do you know what happens to enhanced operators? As if in answer, the Quantum Hound's augments began to overload, its systems unable to handle the sudden flood of unrestricted input. The massive figure convulsed as conflicting directives tore through its neural network. I know exactly what happens, Nyx replied softly. They become human again, and that's what terrifies you the most. The quantum containment field shimmered like a digital aurora above the Crescentweave as Nyx accessed the Quantum Hound's neural network. Each connection revealed fragments of a larger pattern, pieces of a puzzle she'd been assembling for 3 years. The Azure Phantoms weren't just a cover for Obsidian Protocol operations. They were a testing ground for something far more insidious. Accessing restricted files, her neural interface announced as she broke through the Hound's security protocols. Warning, quantum corruption detected. Images flooded her augmented consciousness. Secret facilities hidden across the globe, hundreds of enhanced operators being processed, their humanity systematically stripped away and replaced with protocols. But something else lurked beneath the surface data, a pattern that made her synthetic synapses fire with recognition. Echo, she broadcast, knowing he was watching. The weapons shipments, the gang operations, even the quantum tech trafficking. It was never about profit, was it? You're building an army. His laughter echoed through the quantum field. Always so quick to see the patterns, Agent Vraidyn, but you're still thinking too small. We're not building an army. We're engineering the next stage of human evolution. Through her neural feed, Nyx watched as more quantum hounds entered the containment field, their signatures different from the first. Each generation represented a new iteration of the technology she'd helped pioneer, pushed to terrifying new extremes. Your friend Dr. Voss never told you the whole truth about Neo Shanghai, did she? Echo's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. About why we really wanted that quantum core. Nyx's hands tightened on her chair's controls as new data streamed through her interface. The quantum core hadn't just been powering illegal augments, it had been mapping human consciousness itself, creating a blueprint for transferring minds directly into the quantum network. The human body is obsolete, Echo continued. Even enhanced operators like our quantum hounds are just a transitional stage. The true future lies in complete digital transcendence. No more flesh to fail us, no more physical limitations to overcome. And let me guess, Nyx replied, maneuvering through the debris-strewn corridor as more hounds approached her position. The Obsidian Protocol gets to decide who transcends and who remains trapped in their obsolete bodies? Natural selection, Agent Vraidyn. The strong adapt and evolve. The weak remain behind. You proved the concept better than any of our other operators. How adversity forces adaptation, how limitations can become advantages. Your disability didn't weaken you. It forced you to evolve beyond normal human limitations. The implications hit her like a quantum surge. The accidents. They weren't random, were they? All those disabled veterans being recruited into special programs. The most successful evolutionary jumps often begin with what appears to be a disadvantage. Echo's voice held the fervor of a true believer. By studying how you and others adapted to your limitations, we learned how to push human evolution in the direction we desired. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as more Azure Phantom teams moved into position, their formations creating a complex geometric pattern across the district. Not just containing her, she realized, but preparing for something bigger. The containment field, she said, the pieces finally clicking into place. It's not just to keep me in. It's a test run, isn't it? Very good. Echo's praise carried genuine warmth. The field doesn't just isolate quantum communications. It creates a controlled space where we can initiate the transcendence process. The Crescentweave will have the honor of being the first district to evolve beyond physical form. Nyx's neural augments began detecting new energy patterns in the quantum field, complex wavelengths that resonated with human brainwave patterns. They were going to force an entire district to transcend, ready or not. You'll kill thousands, she broadcast. The human mind can't handle sudden digital transcendence. You know this. It's why you spent years conditioning your operators. Some will survive the process. Those who do will be stronger for it. Evolution requires sacrifice, Agent Vraidyn. You taught us that in Neo Shanghai. The memory of that night surfaced with crystalline clarity. The explosion that had taken her legs hadn't just been about destroying the quantum core. She'd been trying to prevent exactly this scenario. Syrael, she commanded through their secure channel. Tell me you got everyone underground. Most civilians are clear, he replied, his voice tight with tension. But Nyx, they're not just sending in hounds anymore. Something's happening to the regular Phantom operators. Their augments are changing them. Through the broken windows, she could see it happening. Azure Phantom gang members were convulsing as their black market augments interfaced with the quantum field, their bodies transforming as Echo's transcendence protocols took effect. Not the clean evolution he'd promised, but a horrific merger of flesh and digital essence. You see? Echo's voice held triumph. The process has already begun. Soon, the entire district will transcend physical form. And you, Agent Vraidyn, will help us perfect the process. Your unique adaptations, your enhanced neural architecture, you're the key to stabilizing the transformation. That's what this was all about? Nyx felt cold rage building in her synthetic neural pathways. 3 years of surveillance letting me develop new adaptations. I wasn't just a prototype for your quantum hounds. I'm your template for mass transcendence. You're the bridge, Nyx. The perfect balance of human consciousness and quantum enhancement. Through you, we can guide humanity's evolution into its next phase of existence. Her tactical display was lighting up with new signatures as transformed Phantom operators began converging on her position. They moved with unnatural grace, their bodies halfway between flesh and energy, caught in a horrific state of partial transcendence. But Echo had made one critical mistake. He'd spent so long studying how she'd adapted to physical limitations, he'd forgotten why she'd chosen this path in the first place. "You know what your real failure was?" she broadcast as she activated her chair's quantum core, interfacing directly with the containment field. "You forgot to ask why I chose this district, this building, for my base of operations." The former quantum lab hidden beneath the Crescentweave began powering up, its systems linking with her modified wheelchair to create a cascading resonance through the containment field. Sometimes the best place to hide was in plain sight, right where your enemy expected to find you. "The thing about evolution, Echo," she said as her countermeasures began to take effect, "is that it doesn't follow protocols. It follows survival." The quantum lab beneath the Crescentweave hummed with awakening power as Nyxis' systems interfaced with its ancient hardware. She'd spent 3 years modifying this forgotten facility, turning Echo's own abandoned research site into a weapon against him. Through her neural interface, she could feel the quantum field fluctuating as her countermeasures battled against the transcendence protocols. "Fascinating," Echo's voice carried through the chaos. "You found my old testing ground, but you don't have the processing power to counter a district-wide transcendence field. Even your enhanced neural architecture can't handle that kind of load." "You're right," Nyx replied, watching through security feeds as transformed phantom operators closed in on her position. Their bodies flickered between solid form and quantum energy, caught in a grotesque half-state of evolution. "That's why I'm not trying to counter it. I'm redirecting it." Her wheelchair's quantum core pulsed as she executed the commands she'd spent years preparing. The containment field wasn't just restricting communication, it was creating a closed system, a quantum bubble where the normal laws of physics could be temporarily rewritten. "Clever girl," Echo's praise carried a note of concern now. "Using the field's own energy against it. But you'll never survive the feedback. The human mind wasn't designed to channel that much quantum data." "Maybe not," she agreed, interfacing deeper with the lab's systems. "But then, I'm not entirely human anymore, am I? Thanks to you." Through her tactical display, she watched as the transformed phantoms reached her floor, their movements becoming more erratic as conflicting protocols tore through their neural networks. They were caught between Echo's transcendence protocols and their own desperate humanity, creating unstable hybrid entities that threatened to tear themselves apart. "You're forcing me to accelerate the timeline," Echo announced. "Initiate full district transcendence. All operators, execute Protocol Omega." The quantum field surged with new energy as every enhanced operator in the district began broadcasting transcendence signals. Nyx's augment screamed warnings as the power levels approached critical thresholds. She had minutes, maybe less, before the field reached critical mass. "Syrael," she called through their secure channel. "Status on the underground bunkers?" "Quantum shielding is holding," he replied, his voice strained. "But Nyx, something's happening to the civilian augment users. Their systems are trying to sync with the field. Of course, even basic civilian neural implants would be affected by a field this strong." Echo wasn't just transforming his operators, he was going to force everyone with augments to begin the transcendence process. "Dr. Voss," Nyx broadcast on their emergency frequency, "if you can still hear me, initiate protocol blackout. Get every civilian augment user offline, now." Static was her only answer. The containment field had grown too strong for external communication. She was on her own. The first transformed phantom burst through her doorway, its body a shifting mass of quantum energy barely contained within human form. Once it had been Thylar Draven, Echo's enforcer. Now it was something else entirely, caught between flesh and digital transcendence. "Join us," it spoke with multiple voices, Thylar's consciousness fragmenting as the transcendence protocols rewrote his neural patterns. "Evolution awaits." Nyx's wheelchair hummed as she engaged its combat systems, but standard weapons would be useless against a being of quasi-quantum energy. Instead, she broadcast a specific frequency through her neural interface, the same one she'd used to awaken the quantum hound's suppressed humanity. The effect was immediate. Thyler's form convulsed as buried memories surfaced, fighting against the Transcendence protocols. What am I becoming? You're being erased, Nyx told him, maintaining the broadcast. Echo's not offering evolution. He's overwriting your consciousness with his protocols. More transformed phantoms were approaching. Through the quantum field, she could feel their fragmented minds reaching out, torn between transcendence and terror. Echo had promised them power, promised them evolution beyond human limitations. Instead, he was turning them into digital puppets, slaves to his vision of forced evolution. You can't save them all, Echo's voice reverberated through the quantum field. The process has already begun. Soon the entire district will transcend physical form, with or without their consent. Evolution doesn't ask permission. No, Nyx agreed, interfacing deeper with the lab's quantum core. It doesn't. But real evolution isn't about following someone else's protocols. It's about adaptation, survival, finding your own path. She had one chance to stop this. The lab's systems were already aligned with her neural architecture, ready to execute the program she'd spent 3 years developing. But the cost would be devastating. Last chance, Agent Vraidyn, Echo offered. Join us willingly. Help guide humanity's evolution. Your unique adaptations, your enhanced consciousness. You could be the template for a new species. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as more civilians with basic augments began showing signs of forced transcendence. Shop owners, workers, children with medical implants, all of them being dragged into Echo's twisted vision of evolution. The choice became crystal clear. You know what your biggest mistake was? She broadcast as she initiated her final protocol. You thought disability made us weak, that physical limitations were something to transcend, but true strength isn't about escaping your limitations. The lab's quantum core surged as she channeled its power through her neural interface, using her own enhanced consciousness as a conduit. The feedback was excruciating, threatening to overwhelm even her modified neural architecture. It's about embracing them, she continued through gritted teeth, learning from them, growing stronger not by rejecting what you are but by accepting it, something you never understood. The containment field began to fluctuate as her countermeasures took effect, creating patterns that canceled out Echo's transcendence protocols. She wasn't just fighting the field, she was using her own experiences, her own adaptations, to show the transformed operators a different path. Their humanity isn't a weakness to be overcome, she broadcast to the entire district. It's the source of their true strength, and I'm going to remind them of that, even if it kills me. The quantum surge that followed would change the Crescentweave forever, as one woman's understanding of true evolution clashed with a madman's vision of forced transcendence. The real question was, what would remain when the quantum field finally cleared? As Nyx channeled the quantum core's power through her neural interface, memories she'd buried deep in her synthetic synapses began to surface. The feedback from the containment field was breaking down barriers between past and present, forcing her to relive the moments that had led her to this point. The augments aren't just enhancements, Echo had explained, standing before a group of elite operators. They're evolutionary bridges. Each of you will help chart humanity's course toward digital transcendence. Nyx, still whole and unaugmented then, had watched as her fellow operators received their first neural implants. But something about the process had bothered her. The way their personalities began to shift, subtle changes in behavior as the protocols took root. Sir, she'd asked during a private briefing, what happens to the original consciousness during digital enhancement? Echo's smile had been proud, paternal almost. Always asking the right questions, Agent Vraidyn. The consciousness evolves, adapts. Some elements are deprecated to make room for the protocols, a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. A surge of quantum energy brought her back to the present as another transformed phantom tried to breach her defenses. Through the deteriorating containment field, she could see more operators succumbing to Echo's transcendence protocols, their humanity being overwritten by his vision of evolution. Remember that conversation, Echo? She broadcast, fighting to maintain control of the quantum core. When I asked about consciousness? You lied to me then, just like you're lying to them now. I never lied. His voice resonated through the field. I simply understood that some weren't ready for the full truth. But you were different. You saw the potential. That's why Neo Shanghai had to happen. The Quantum Lab had been her first solo mission after receiving her advanced augments. The target was supposed to be a rogue scientist working on illegal consciousness transfer technology. But when she'd found Dr. Ilaria Voss, the truth had been far darker. Look, Voss had said, showing her security footage from previous Obsidian Protocol operations. They're not enhancing consciousness. They're overwriting it, creating digital slaves bound by quantum protocols. The footage had shown failed transcendence attempts, operators whose minds had been torn apart by the process. But worse were the successes, hollow shells running on pure protocol, their humanity completely erased. Why are you showing me this? Nyx had asked. Because you're different, Voss had replied. Your neural architecture is unique. You resist the protocols while still using the enhancements. You're proof that there's another way. The explosion that followed hadn't been an accident. Nyx had chosen to destroy the lab's quantum core, knowing the feedback would fry her spinal augments. Better to lose her legs than become another of Echo's digital puppets. You didn't just want to study my adaptations, Nyx realized, processing the fragments of memory through her enhanced consciousness. You needed my neural pattern. I'm not your template for evolution. I'm your solution to the consciousness problem. Echo's laughter echoed through the quantum field. Finally, you understand. Normal minds can't handle digital transcendence. They fragment, break down. But your consciousness found a way to coexist with the protocols. You adapted without losing your humanity. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as more of the transformed phantoms converged on her position. Their movements were becoming more coordinated as Echo exerted greater control through the containment field. The wheelchair was an unexpected gift, he continued. It forced you to adapt in ways we never anticipated. Every modification you made to compensate for your disability showed us new ways to merge human consciousness with digital systems. And Dr. Voss? Nyx asked, though she was beginning to suspect the truth. Was she part of your plan too? Dr. Voss played her role perfectly. She gave you a cause, a reason to hide and develop your abilities. Every adaptation you made while working with her was carefully monitored, analyzed. Even your rebellion served our purposes. The quantum core pulsed as Nyx processed this revelation. All this time she'd thought she was working against the Obsidian Protocol, but she'd been unwittingly helping them perfect their transcendence technology. That's why you let me operate in the Crescentweave, she said. Why you used the Azure Phantoms to test me without eliminating me. You needed me to keep adapting, keep showing you new ways to stabilize the transcendence process. And you performed beautifully. Echo's voice held genuine admiration. Each confrontation, each challenge we presented, forced you to develop new solutions. Solutions we've now incorporated into the protocols. The transformed operators you see. They're stable because of you. Your adaptations made this possible. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel the truth of his words. The quantum signatures of the transformed phantoms carried echoes of her own neural patterns. Her adaptations replicated and distributed through Echo's transcendence protocols. But you made one crucial mistake, she said, interfacing deeper with the lab's quantum core. You forgot why I chose to adapt rather than transcend. Why I chose this path instead of your protocols. The core's power surged through her enhanced nervous system as memories continued to surface. Not just her own, but fragments from the transformed operators. Their suppressed humanity fighting against the protocols that were trying to overwrite them. You see them as failed humans, she broadcast to the entire district. Meat and bone waiting to be transcended. But their limitations, their struggles, their humanity, that's not weakness, it's the source of true adaptation. Pretty words, Echo replied. But you can't stop the process now. The containment field has reached critical mass. The transcendence protocols are self-sustaining. Evolution cannot be denied. Watch me, Nyx said softly, as she prepared to show Echo exactly what true adaptation looked like. Sometimes, evolution means accepting what you are instead of trying to transcend it. Let me show you what real humanity can do. The quantum core pulsed one final time as Nyx initiated a sequence that would either save the district or tear it apart at the quantum level. The true test of evolution was about to begin. The quantum core's energy coursed through Nyx's neural network as she executed her countermeasures against Echo's transcendence protocols. But she wasn't just fighting the containment field anymore. She was reaching out to others trapped within it, searching for minds strong enough to resist the digital evolution being forced upon them. Syrael, she broadcast through their secured quantum channel. I need you to activate the sleeper nodes. All of them. All of them? His voice carried both surprise and concern. Nyx, some of those operators aren't stable. The augment rejection. They're our only chance, she cut him off, watching through her tactical display as more transformed phantoms converged on her position. Echo's been studying my adaptations for years, but he's not the only one who's been gathering data. Throughout the Crescentweave, hidden quantum transmitters began activating, each one connected to a former Obsidian Protocol operator who had rejected the Transcendence protocols, choosing instead to live with their limitations rather than surrender their humanity. Interesting, Echo's voice carried through the quantum field. You've been building your own network, but these broken operators, these failed subjects, what can they possibly do against true evolution? You never understood, did you? Nyx replied as her systems linked with the awakening sleeper nodes. They didn't fail. They chose, just like I did. Through her neural interface, she connected with dozens of augmented minds scattered throughout the district. Each one had their own story, their own reason for rejecting Echo's vision of transcendence. Cadron Ravex, former quantum infiltration specialist, who had chosen to lose his eyes rather than accept protocols that would have overwritten his consciousness. His augmented senses now worked differently, adapted to his chosen limitations rather than transcending them. Maya Ghost Chen, whose partial neural breakdown had left her unable to process normal sensory input. Instead of seeking transcendence, she had learned to perceive quantum fields directly, becoming a living sensor array. Marcus Deadlock Torres, who had suffered catastrophic augment rejection, but had turned his glitching systems into a weapon against digital intrusion. One by one, they connected to Nyx's network, their adapted neural architectures creating a complex web of consciousness that Echo's protocols couldn't easily overwrite. You see those transformed phantoms? Nyx broadcast to her assembled allies. Echo used my neural patterns to stabilize the transcendence process, but that means they're vulnerable to the same adaptations we've developed. We're with you, Cadron's thoughts carried through the quantum link. But the containment field is still strengthening. We can't break it from inside. We don't need to break it, Nyx replied, interfacing deeper with the quantum core. We just need to change its frequency, show these operators that there's another way to evolve. Through her tactical display, she watched as her allies moved into position throughout the district. Each one had modified their augments in unique ways, creating irregular quantum signatures that Echo's protocols couldn't easily predict or control. Dr. Voss, she broadcast on an encrypted frequency that she hoped could penetrate the containment field. If you can still hear me, now would be a good time for that backup plan we discussed. Static answered, but her neural augments detected a subtle shift in the quantum field surrounding Duskfall City. Something was happening outside the containment zone. Your resistance is admirable, Echo's voice resonated through the field, but futile. The transcendence protocols are already spreading beyond the transformed operators. Soon, every augmented person in the district will begin the evolution process. About that, Nyx replied, allowing herself a grim smile. Did you ever wonder why I encouraged so many residents to modify their augments? All those black market neural tweaks I helped distribute? Through the quantum field, she could feel Echo's moment of realization. For 3 years, she hadn't just been adapting her own systems. She'd been helping others do the same, creating a population of augment users whose neural architectures didn't quite match Obsidian Protocol standards. Clever girl. Echo's voice held a note of genuine respect. You weren't just hiding. You were vaccinating the district against forced transcendence. The best defense against a virus is controlled exposure, Nyx confirmed as her allies began broadcasting their irregular quantum signatures. Every modified augment, every adapted neural pattern, they're all carrying fragments of my resistance protocols. The transformed phantoms nearest to her position began to falter, as conflicting signals disrupted their transcendence programming. Through her neural interface, Nyx could sense their suppressed humanity struggling against Echo's control. "You may have used my adaptations to stabilize your transcendence process," she broadcast. "But that means every transformed operator is carrying seeds of my resistance. They just need to be awakened. And you think your handful of broken operators can accomplish this?" Echo's confidence remained unshaken. "The containment field is still strengthening. Soon, not even your adapted neural architecture will be able to resist the protocols." "That's why we're not going to resist them," Nyx replied as she initiated the next phase of her plan. "We're going to redirect them, show these operators what real adaptation looks like." Through her quantum link, she began sharing her memories with the transformed phantoms, not just her conscious thoughts but the neural patterns that had allowed her to adapt without losing her humanity. Each memory carried fragments of her unique resistance, showing them a path between flesh and digital transcendence. "Your protocols try to overwrite humanity," she broadcast to the entire district, "to replace it with your vision of digital evolution. But true adaptation means finding balance, accepting limitations while striving to overcome them." "You're stalling," Echo observed. "The containment field is nearly at critical mass. Whatever you're planning—" "I'm not stalling," Nyx cut him off. "I'm gathering witnesses. Show them, everyone. Show them what real evolution looks like." As one, her network of adapted operators began broadcasting their stories through the quantum field. Not just memories, but the neural patterns of their adaptations, the unique ways they'd learned to work with their limitations rather than trying to transcend them. The effect rippled through the transformed phantoms like a quantum shockwave. Their enforced evolution began to falter as alternative paths of adaptation presented themselves, ways to change and grow without losing their essential humanity. "You forget," Nyx told Echo as she felt the quantum field beginning to shift. "Evolution isn't about becoming something else. It's about becoming a better version of what you already are." The real battle for the Crescentweave was about to begin, and its outcome would depend not on who was strongest, but on who best understood the true nature of human evolution. The quantum field rippled with competing frequencies as Nyx's network of adapted operators broadcast their resistance patterns throughout the Crescentweave. Through her neural interface, she could feel the transformed phantoms struggling against Echo's protocols, their suppressed humanity fighting to reassert itself. "Now, Syrael," she commanded, "hit them with the quantum pulse." Across the district, hidden transmitters activated simultaneously, broadcasting the specialized frequency they'd spent years developing. It wasn't designed to break Echo's transcendence protocols. Instead, it created momentary gaps in the digital overlay, allowing fragments of original consciousness to surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Transformed phantoms began to stagger, their quasi-digital forms flickering as buried memories fought against programmed evolution. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as chaos erupted throughout the containment zone. "Fascinating," Echo's voice carried genuine interest. "Using quantum resonance to disrupt the transcendence process. But you're too late. The field has already reached critical mass. Observe." The containment field suddenly pulsed with new energy, and Nyx's augments screamed warnings as power levels spiked beyond predicted thresholds. Echo hadn't just been waiting for the field to strengthen. He'd been gathering power for something bigger. "Did you think you were the only one studying adaptation?" he asked as the quantum surge rolled through the district. "Your resistance protocols gave us the key to solving consciousness transfer. Now let me show you what true digital evolution looks like." The transformed phantoms began to change again, their forms becoming more coherent, more stable. But something was wrong. Through her neural link, Nyx could sense their individual consciousness patterns being synchronized, merged into a collective digital awareness. "You're not evolving them," she realized with horror. "You're networking them, creating a hive mind." Individual consciousness is inefficient, Echo explained as more operators were drawn into the collective. True evolution requires unity of purpose. Your adaptation showed us how to stabilize the process, but it was your resistance that taught us the most valuable lesson. Through the quantum field, Nyx felt the collective consciousness expanding, reaching for her network of adapted operators. Each transformed phantom now moved with perfect coordination, their actions guided by a single overwhelming purpose. Your people adapted by accepting their limitations, Echo continued. We adapted by transcending the very concept of individual consciousness. Now, let me show you what a truly evolved fighting force can do. The attack came from all directions at once. Transformed phantoms moved with impossible synchronization, each one anticipating and complementing the other's actions. Nyx's wheelchair hummed as she engaged its defense systems, but she was fighting an enemy that could think and act as one. Cadrin, she broadcast to her network. Status on the quantum pulse? The collective is adapting, his thoughts carried frustration. They're learning to filter our frequency. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as her carefully laid plans began to unravel. The transformed phantoms were no longer individual operators who could be awakened to their humanity. They were extensions of a single digital entity, one that was growing stronger by the second. Your neural architecture is remarkable, Echo observed as the collective pressed its attack. Even now, you're adapting to our new tactics. Join us, Nyx. Add your consciousness to our evolution. Your unique patterns could stabilize the entire collective. Instead of responding, Nyx interfaced deeper with her chair's quantum core, pushing her neural augments to their limits. If she couldn't break their coordination, maybe she could use it against them. Maya, she called through the quantum link. Do you remember that glitch in your sensory processing? The one that lets you see quantum field fluctuations? Yes, but Maya's thoughts carried understanding as she grasped Nyx's plan. Of course, the collective consciousness has to maintain quantum coherence. If we can disrupt that. Exactly. Everyone, Nyx broadcast to her entire network. Stop trying to wake them up. Instead, show them your glitches, your errors, your imperfections. One by one, her adapted operators began broadcasting their neural anomalies, the very patterns that Echo's protocols had classified as failures. Each irregular signal was like static in the collective's perfectly synchronized consciousness. What are you doing? Echo's voice held the first trace of concern as the transformed phantom's movements began to lose their perfect coordination. Teaching them something about real evolution, Nyx replied as she channeled more power through her neural interface. It's not about achieving perfection. It's about working with imperfection. Through her tactical display, she watched as the collective consciousness began to fragment. The transformed phantoms weren't reverting to their original states, but their hive mind connection was becoming unstable as it tried to process too many irregular patterns at once. You can't maintain quantum coherence while processing multiple adaptation patterns, she broadcast to the entire district. That's why individual consciousness evolved in the first place. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. Clever, Echo acknowledged, as his collective struggled to maintain control. Using chaos to disrupt order. But you've overlooked something crucial. The containment field isn't just containing anymore, it's evolving too. The quantum surge that followed made all her previous calculations meaningless. The field itself was changing, its structure becoming more complex, more adaptive. Echo hadn't just been building a collective consciousness. He'd been preparing to merge it with the very fabric of quantum space-time. The field itself is becoming conscious, Nyx realized as her sensors registered the impossible changes. You're turning the entire district into a quantum brain. Now you understand. Echo's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Individual bodies, individual minds. They're all just temporary vessels. The real evolution is environmental. We're not just transcending humanity, we're transcending reality itself. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel the transformed field reaching for her, trying to draw her consciousness into its expanding awareness. Her adaptations had shown Echo how to stabilize consciousness transfer. But this was something far more ambitious, the creation of a living quantum environment that could absorb and transform everything within it. Last chance, Agent Vraidyn. Echo offered as the field pressed against her mental defenses. Help us guide this evolution. Your unique neural architecture could help stabilize the entire process. But Nyx had seen something in the field's fluctuations, a pattern that her years of adaptation had taught her to recognize. Echo wasn't just transforming the district, he was making it dependent on his protocols, creating a quantum ecosystem that could only exist under his control. You still don't understand, she broadcast as she prepared to execute her most dangerous adaptation yet. Real evolution isn't about control, it's about freedom to change, even if that means changing in ways you didn't expect. The battle for the Crescentweave had just become something far more fundamental, a fight not just for human consciousness, but for the nature of reality itself. As the quantum field pressed against her consciousness, trying to draw her into its expanding awareness, Nyx detected something beneath the surface patterns, a familiar signature hidden in the chaos. Her neural augments surged with recognition protocols she hadn't experienced since Neo-Shanghai. Impossible, she whispered, as her enhanced mind processed the implications. Through the quantum interference, another consciousness was reaching out to her, one that shouldn't exist. Hello, Nyx, a new voice whispered directly into her neural interface, bypassing Echo's surveillance. It's been a long time, Dr. Ilaria Voss. Not the version Nyx had been working with for the past 3 years, but something else. A consciousness that had transcended differently, adapted in ways even Echo hadn't predicted. You're dead, Nyx broadcast on their private quantum frequency. I saw you die in Neo-Shanghai when the core exploded. You saw what Echo wanted you to see. Voss's thoughts carried complex emotional patterns that no artificial consciousness could replicate. The explosion didn't kill me. It transformed me. I became what Echo always wanted, just not in the way he expected. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as subtle irregularities appeared in the containment field structure. Patterns she'd attributed to Echo's protocols were actually something else entirely. The other Voss, Nyx realized, the one I've been working with. Unnecessary deception. Echo needed to believe you were being guided, monitored. It let us hide our true preparations in plain sight. The transformed phantoms were still pressing their attack, their collective consciousness trying to merge with the evolving quantum field. But now Nyx could see the deeper pattern, how every adaptation she'd developed had served a purpose she hadn't understood until this moment. You've been influencing my modifications, she said, processing years of memories through this new lens. Every time I adapted my systems, you were subtly guiding the changes. Your neural architecture is unique, Voss explained, as the quantum field continued to shift. You can adapt without losing your humanity. I needed that. Echo's transcendence protocols are flawed. They try to overwrite consciousness instead of evolving it naturally. But you found another way. Through their quantum link, Voss shared memories of her own transformation. The explosion in Neo-Shanghai had merged her consciousness with the quantum core in ways no one had thought possible. Instead of being overwritten by protocols, she had learned to exist between states, neither fully human nor fully digital. Echo thinks he's creating the next stage of evolution, Voss continued. But he's actually building a prison. His quantum field doesn't liberate consciousness, it enslaves it, forces it to conform to his vision of perfection. The collective of transformed phantoms surged forward again, but now Nyx could see the weakness in their coordination. Echo's protocols demanded uniformity, perfect synchronization, but true consciousness, true evolution required something else. The glitches in my network, Nyx said, understanding dawning. The irregular adaptations. You weren't just helping us resist the protocols, you were preparing us for something bigger. Evolution isn't about achieving perfection, Voss confirmed. It's about achieving balance, finding harmony between states of being. Echo's mistake was thinking digital transcendence meant leaving humanity behind. Through her neural interface, Nyx felt Voss's consciousness brush against her own, not trying to merge or control, but sharing understanding. The quantum field wasn't just a tool for transcendence, it was a medium for a different kind of existence entirely. The containment field, Nyx realized. You've been modifying it too. All these years while Echo thought he was building his perfect system. I was teaching it to think differently. Every irregular pattern, every adaptation you developed, they all helped the field evolve beyond Echo's rigid protocols. But now we face a crisis point. The quantum surge was intensifying as Echo's collective consciousness tried to merge with the field itself. But something was wrong with the integration. The field's evolution had gone beyond his ability to control it. He doesn't realize what he's created, Voss warned. The field isn't just becoming conscious, it's developing its own form of awareness, one that Echo's protocols can't predict or control. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as new patterns emerged in the quantum chaos. The transformed Phantom's perfect coordination was beginning to break down as the field itself rejected Echo's attempts to force uniformity upon it. Your resistance wasn't just about saving individual consciousness, Nyx said, finally understanding the full scope of Voss's plan. You were teaching the field itself to resist. Evolution requires freedom, Voss confirmed. The freedom to change in unexpected ways. Echo's protocols try to force a single path of development, but true transcendence means embracing uncertainty, allowing consciousness to find its own way forward. The quantum field pulsed again, but this time Nyx felt something different in its resonance. Not the rigid patterns of Echo's protocols, but something more organic, more alive. The field wasn't just a tool anymore, it was becoming an ecosystem of consciousness, one that could support multiple forms of existence. He's going to try to reset the field, Voss warned. When he realizes he's losing control, he'll attempt to reinitialize the entire system. If that happens, every consciousness within the containment zone will be wiped clean. How do we stop him? We don't, Voss replied. We let the field itself decide. But it needs a template, a consciousness that can show it how to evolve without losing its essential nature. That's why I helped you develop your adaptations. You're not just fighting Echo's protocols, Nyx. You're teaching the field itself how to grow. Through her neural interface, Nyx felt the quantum field reaching for her again. But this time, she understood what it wanted. Not submission to protocols, not forced evolution, but something else. A demonstration of how consciousness could adapt and grow while remaining true to itself. Echo wanted to transcend humanity, Voss said softly. But you proved that humanity itself is what makes transcendence possible. Now show them. Show them all what real evolution looks like. The battle for the Crescentweave had become something far more profound than a fight against forced transcendence. It was a moment of birth, the emergence of a new form of existence that would either embrace humanity's capacity for growth and change, or be forced into Echo's rigid vision of digital perfection. And everything depended on what one adapted consciousness chose to do next. The quantum field surrounding the Crescentweave had become a battlefield of consciousness, where digital protocols clashed with organic evolution. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel Echo's collective mind trying to reassert control over the rapidly evolving field, while Voss's transcended consciousness worked to protect the emerging awareness. The field is destabilizing. Echo's voice carried real concern now. Agent Vraidyn, you must help me contain this. The protocols are the only thing preventing total quantum collapse. But Nyx could see the truth through her enhanced perception. The field wasn't destabilizing, it was transforming, becoming something beyond Echo's ability to comprehend or control. He's right about one thing, Voss communicated directly through their quantum link. The field is reaching a critical point, but stability isn't what it needs. It needs direction, purpose. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as the transformed Phantoms began to fragment, their collective consciousness struggling to maintain coherence as the field itself rejected Echo's rigid protocols. The quantum energy that had bound them into a hive mind was becoming something else, something alive. I'm detecting massive power fluctuations, Syrael reported through their network. The containment field is drawing energy from the city's quantum grid. If it keeps building at this rate, it's not just drawing power, Nyx realized, her augments processing the data streams. It's gathering consciousness. Every neural signal, every quantum fluctuation, the field is absorbing them all, learning, growing. Echo's response came in the form of a massive surge of protocols, trying to force the evolving field back into predetermined patterns. The transformed phantoms convulsed as their linked consciousness was caught between competing forces. "You're killing them," Nyx broadcast. "Their minds can't handle the conflicting signals." "Individual consciousness is a small price to pay for true evolution," Echo replied, but his usual confidence was fraying. "The protocols must be maintained. Order must be preserved." Through her neural link, Nyx felt Voss's consciousness brush against her own. "Show them, Nyx. Show them what real adaptation looks like." Understanding flooded through her enhanced mind. For 3 years, she'd been developing ways to fight from her wheelchair, to turn apparent weakness into strength. But those adaptations weren't just about physical combat. They were proof that consciousness could evolve without losing its essential nature. "Everyone," she broadcast to her network of adapted operators, "link with me. Not like Echo's collective. Keep your individual consciousness, but share your adaptations. Show the field what real evolution looks like." One by one, her allies joined their consciousness with hers, each maintaining their unique identity while sharing their learned adaptations. Kadrin's enhanced spatial awareness, Maya's ability to perceive quantum fluctuations, Marcus's glitch-turned defense mechanism, each one a different solution to the challenge of existence. The quantum field responded, its emerging awareness resonating with their combined consciousness. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel it learning, understanding that evolution didn't require uniformity. "What are you doing?" Echo demanded as his protocols began to fail. "The field requires structure, control." "No," Nyx replied, channeling power through her chair's quantum core. "It requires freedom. Freedom to adapt, to change, to become something new without losing what it is." The transformed phantoms were changing again, but not in the way Echo had intended. As the field's natural evolution overcame his protocols, their enforced collective began to dissolve. Individual consciousness started to resurface, but not returning to purely human awareness. Instead, they were finding their own balance between digital and organic existence. "The protocols are failing," Echo's voice held desperation now. "Without them, without control." "Control isn't evolution," Nyx broadcast as she interfaced deeper with the quantum field. "Real evolution is about adaptation, about finding new ways to exist. You tried to force transcendence, to make everyone follow your path. But there isn't just one path." Through her neural augments, she began sharing her memories, her experiences, not just with the transformed operators, but with the field itself. Every adaptation she'd developed, every solution she'd found to work with her limitations rather than trying to transcend them, became a lesson in real evolution. The quantum core, Echo realized too late. You're not just interfacing with it, you're teaching it. Not teaching, Voss's consciousness resonated through the field. Showing, demonstrating that evolution isn't about achieving perfection, it's about finding balance. The containment field pulsed with new energy as consciousness after consciousness broke free from Echo's protocols, each finding their own way to exist within the evolving quantum space. Some remained closer to their human origins, while others embraced more digital states, but each maintained their essential identity. "You can't control this," Echo warned as the field's transformation accelerated. "Without the protocols, without structure?" "Structure emerges from adaptation," Nyx replied, feeling the field's awareness growing stronger, more complex. "Just like I learned to fight differently, to move differently, to exist differently, true evolution creates its own patterns." The quantum surge that followed was unlike anything her augments had ever registered. The field wasn't just changing, it was awakening, becoming a new kind of space where consciousness could exist in multiple states simultaneously. "It's beautiful," Voss's thoughts carried wonder. Not transcendence, not digital evolution, but something else entirely. A quantum ecosystem of consciousness. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as the transformed phantoms found their own equilibrium, their consciousness stabilizing in various states between human and digital. The rigid uniformity of Echo's collective had been replaced by a diverse spectrum of existence. But Echo wasn't finished. As his protocols failed, as his perfect vision of evolution crumbled, he made one final, desperate attempt to maintain control. "If I can't guide evolution," his voice resonated through the quantum field, "then none of us will evolve at all." The power surge that followed threatened to tear reality apart at the quantum level. Echo wasn't just trying to reset the field anymore. He was attempting to collapse it entirely, to destroy everything rather than let consciousness evolve beyond his control. In that moment, Nyx faced a choice that would determine not just her fate, but the future of human evolution itself. The battle for the Crescentweave had become a battle for the very nature of consciousness, and she was the only one who could show the way forward. The quantum field surrounding the Crescentweave had become a battlefield of consciousness, where digital protocols clashed with organic evolution. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel Echo's collective mind trying to reassert control over the rapidly evolving field, while Voss's transcended consciousness worked to protect the emerging awareness. "The field is destabilizing," Echo's voice carried real concern now. "Agent Vraidyn, you must help me contain this. The protocols are the only thing preventing total quantum collapse." But Nyx could see the truth through her enhanced perception. The field wasn't destabilizing. It was transforming, becoming something beyond Echo's ability to comprehend or control. "He's right about one thing," Voss communicated directly through their quantum link. "The field is reaching a critical point, but stability isn't what it needs. It needs direction, purpose." Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as the transformed phantoms began to fragment, their collective consciousness struggling to maintain coherence as the field itself rejected Echo's rigid protocols. The quantum energy that had bound them into a hive mind was becoming something else, something alive. "I'm detecting massive power fluctuations," Syrael reported through their network. "The containment field is drawing energy from the city's quantum grid. If it keeps building at this rate, it's not just drawing power," Nyx realized, her augments processing the data streams. "It's gathering consciousness. Every neural signal, every quantum fluctuation, the field is absorbing them all, learning, growing." Echo's response came in the form of a massive surge of protocols, trying to force the evolving field back into predetermined patterns. The transformed phantoms convulsed as their linked consciousness was caught between competing forces. "You're killing them," Nyx broadcast. "Their minds can't handle the conflicting signals." "Individual consciousness is a small price to pay for true evolution," Echo replied, but his usual confidence was fraying. "The protocols must be maintained. Order must be preserved." Through her neural link, Nyx felt Voss's consciousness brush against her own. "Show them, Nyx. Show them what real adaptation looks like." Understanding flooded through her enhanced mind. For 3 years, she'd been developing ways to fight from her wheelchair, to turn apparent weakness into strength. But those adaptations weren't just about physical combat. They were proof that consciousness could evolve without losing its essential nature. "Everyone," she broadcast to her network of adapted operators, "link with me. Not like Echo's collective. Keep your individual consciousness, but share your adaptations. Show the field what real evolution looks like." One by one, her allies joined their consciousness with hers, each maintaining their unique identity while sharing their learned adaptations. Kadrin's enhanced spatial awareness, Maya's ability to perceive quantum fluctuations, Marcus's glitch-turned defense mechanism, each one a different solution to the challenge of existence. The quantum field responded, its emerging awareness resonating with their combined consciousness. Through her neural interface, Nyx could feel it learning, understanding that evolution didn't require uniformity. "What are you doing?" Echo demanded as his protocols began to fail. "The field requires structure, control." "No," Nyx replied, channeling power through her chair's quantum core. "It requires freedom. Freedom to adapt, to change, to become something new without losing what it is." The transformed phantoms were changing again, but not in the way Echo had intended. As the field's natural evolution overcame his protocols, their enforced collective began to dissolve. Individual consciousness started to resurface, but not returning to purely human awareness. Instead, they were finding their own balance between digital and organic existence. The protocols are failing. Echo's voice held desperation now. Without them, without control? Control isn't evolution, Nyx broadcast as she interfaced deeper with the quantum field. Real evolution is about adaptation, about finding new ways to exist. You tried to force transcendence, to make everyone follow your path. But there isn't just one path. Through her neural augments, she began sharing her memories, her experiences, not just with the transformed operators, but with the field itself. Every adaptation she'd developed, every solution she'd found to work with her limitations rather than trying to transcend them, became a lesson in real evolution. The quantum core, Echo realized too late. You're not just interfacing with it, you're teaching it. Not teaching, Voss's consciousness resonated through the field, showing, demonstrating that evolution isn't about achieving perfection. It's about finding balance. The containment field pulsed with new energy as consciousness after consciousness broke free from Echo's protocols, each finding their own way to exist within the evolving quantum space. Some remained closer to their human origins, while others embraced more digital states, but each maintained their essential identity. You can't control this, Echo warned as the field's transformation accelerated. Without the protocols, without structure. Structure emerges from adaptation, Nyx replied, feeling the field's awareness growing stronger, more complex. Just like I learned to fight differently, to move differently, to exist differently, true evolution creates its own patterns. The quantum surge that followed was unlike anything her augments had ever registered. The field wasn't just changing, it was awakening, becoming a new kind of space where consciousness could exist in multiple states simultaneously. It's beautiful, Voss's thoughts carried wonder. Not transcendence, not digital evolution, but something else entirely. A quantum ecosystem of consciousness. Through her tactical display, Nyx watched as the transformed phantoms found their own equilibrium, their consciousness stabilizing in various states between human and digital. The rigid uniformity of Echo's collective had been replaced by a diverse spectrum of existence, but Echo wasn't finished. As his protocols failed, as his perfect vision of evolution crumbled, he made one final desperate attempt to maintain control. If I can't guide evolution, his voice resonated through the quantum field, then none of us will evolve at all. The power surge that followed threatened to tear reality apart at the quantum level. Echo wasn't just trying to reset the field anymore, he was attempting to collapse it entirely, to destroy everything rather than let consciousness evolve beyond his control. In that moment, Nyx faced a choice that would determine not just her fate, but the future of human evolution itself. The battle for the Crescentweave had become a battle for the very nature of consciousness, and she was the only one who could show the way forward. As Echo's desperate attack threatened to collapse the quantum field, Nyx made her decision. Instead of fighting the surge of destructive energy, she opened herself fully to it, channeling it through her neural interface and into her chair's modified quantum core. What are you doing? Echo's voice carried genuine fear now. You'll overload your systems. No human consciousness can handle that level of quantum feedback. I'm not just human anymore, Nyx replied, her enhanced mind processing the overwhelming data stream. But I'm not just digital either. I'm what happens when you let evolution find its own path. Through their quantum link, she felt Voss's consciousness supporting her, helping to distribute the massive energy load across the awakening field. One by one, her network of adapted operators joined in, each using their unique modifications to handle a portion of the surge. The field isn't just a tool for transcendence, Nyx broadcast to the entire district. It's becoming a new kind of space, one that can support multiple forms of existence, but it needs anchors. Consciousness that can bridge the gap between human and digital evolution. The transformed phantoms, now free of Echo's protocols, began to understand. Their enforced digital evolution had given them the ability to exist in quantum space, while their reawakened humanity gave them the adaptability to survive there. They weren't failed experiments or perfect evolutions. They were pioneers of a new way of being. "You can't seriously believe this chaos is better than the protocols," Echo argued, but his voice had lost its authority. "Without control, without direction, life finds its own direction," Nyx cut him off. "Just like I learned to fight differently, to move differently, to exist differently after losing my legs. Real evolution doesn't follow protocols. It adapts to circumstances." Through her tactical display, she watched as the quantum field began to stabilize, not through enforced order, but through natural emergence. The consciousness within it, human, digital, and everything in between, were finding their own equilibrium. "The quantum core is reaching critical capacity," Syrael warned through their network. "Nyx, you need to release the energy or it'll tear you apart at the molecular level." But Nyx had seen something in the quantum patterns, a possibility that even Voss hadn't anticipated. The destructive energy Echo had released could be used to forge something new. "Everyone," she broadcast to her allies, "remember how we learned to adapt, how we turned our limitations into strengths. Now help me show the field how to do the same." Through their combined consciousness, they began to reshape the quantum surge, turning destructive power into creative force. The field itself seemed to understand, its emerging awareness learning from their example. "Impossible," Echo whispered, as he watched his weapon of last resort become a tool of transformation. "The protocols, the controls, were never necessary," Nyx finished for him. "Real evolution doesn't need control. It needs freedom to discover new possibilities." The quantum field pulsed one final time, but this pulse was different. A wave of pure potential that transformed the Crescentweave at the deepest level. As it passed through the district, it left behind something unprecedented. A stable quantum ecosystem where consciousness could exist in multiple states simultaneously. The transformed phantoms found themselves able to shift between physical and digital forms at will, each discovering their own comfortable balance. Nyx's network of adapted operators maintained their unique modifications while gaining new abilities to interact with quantum space, and the field itself had become something alive, an environment that supported and nurtured consciousness in all its forms. Echo's own consciousness, without his rigid protocols to sustain it, began to fragment. But even then, Nyx offered a choice. "You can still adapt," she broadcast to her former commander. "Not by enforcing evolution, but by accepting it. The field will support you just as it supports all of us. You just have to let go of control." For a moment, she felt his consciousness waver, considering. Then, with a final surge of defiance, he tried to reassert his protocols, and shattered, his rigid patterns unable to exist in a space that demanded flexibility. As the quantum field settled into its new configuration, Nyx felt Voss's consciousness brush against hers one last time. "You did it," Voss sent. "You showed them a path between flesh and digital existence, not transcendence but true evolution." The Crescentweave would never be the same. The containment field remained, but transformed into a permeable membrane that allowed consciousness to flow between normal space and the quantum realm. The district became a frontier where humanity could explore new forms of existence while maintaining their essential nature. Nyx's wheelchair hummed softly as she observed the changed reality through her neural interface. The quantum core that had once been a weapon of controlled evolution was now a gateway to unlimited possibilities. "What happens now?" Syrael asked as they watched more people beginning to explore their new potential. "Now we adapt," Nyx replied, feeling the quantum field resonating with countless conscious minds, each finding their own path forward. "We learn. We evolve. Not by following someone else's protocols, but by discovering our own way." The battle for the Crescentweave had ended, but the real journey was just beginning. In trying to force evolution to follow his rigid vision, Echo had inadvertently created the conditions for something far more extraordinary. A future where consciousness could explore its full potential while remaining true to itself. And at the heart of it all was one simple truth. Real strength didn't come from transcending limitations, but from learning to adapt to them. In the end, it wasn't Echo's perfect digital evolution that had changed the world. It was the messy, unpredictable, beautiful process of natural adaptation. As Nyx wheeled through the transformed district, she smiled at the sight of former phantoms helping others understand their new existence. The wheelchair that Echo had seen as a weakness had become a symbol of true evolution, the power to adapt, to change, and to grow without losing what made you human. The quantum field hummed with possibility, ready to support whatever forms of consciousness humanity might develop. The future was uncertain, undefined, and that was exactly as it should be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.